6 o'clock.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of Bella Vista City Council for September 23, 2024. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Council members Snow,
Here.
Hughes,
Here.
Wozniak is absent tonight, Wilms,
Here.
Fowler,
Here.
and Hanschel,
Here.
Mayor Flynn.
Okay, it's now time for citizen input. There is a 3-minute per person time limit to address the council on any topic of the person's choosing. I'll call the first name is Ellen Creekbaum. Address is 50 Churchill Drive.
Yes, Ellen Creekbaum. If I'm not correct, but I think I am, the ordinance for the STRs went into effect July of 2023. After years of hard work with the mayor and citizens and council, we wrote it, we supported it, we changed it, and our city lawyer fought for it in court, and city planning has worked behind the scenes, I know. I would like an update on where we are with enforcing the ordinance. So here are my questions. I'm aware of 2 STRs operating without a permit just on my street alone. How are the permits being tracked? Are city employees looking for these unpermitted businesses? I called about one, but I have no way of knowing whether they have a permit now or not. What more is to be said, number 2, about Mason Lane that Laura hasn't already said? I saw it advertised as the second best lodging in Northwest Arkansas, with 21C Hotel being number 1 and them being number 2. I understand that they also not only own 1 home, but they have 3 and a lot and a bus. What is in place to be sure that this doesn't happen in other neighborhoods? The third question, there's a 3-strike rule as a part of the ordinance. How are the 3 strikes being documented and tracked? Have any permits been revoked? Are the STRs with complaints being patrolled? If ordinances are not enforced, then we work hard for nothing. Does the Bella Vista have a deep state? Do they not want to enforce it? But most importantly, do the enforcers have the guidelines they need to enforce? And are these guidelines clear? Finally, the state legislature meets again in January, and there will be another SB 197 put forth. Are the cities and towns ready? Will they stand together this time to fight it? The bill is being written right now. Have you been asked for your input, and have you given it? I have a list of these questions I will leave, and I appreciate a follow-up answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. The next speaker, our next citizen is Rhonda Dietz of 3 Robin Lane in Bella Vista.
Thank you. I am Rhonda Dietz, and I'm here to follow up on Ellen's remarks about the SDR ordinance. Robin Lane is a serene, peaceful, beautiful neighborhood cul-de-sac with 8 houses, 2 of which are now Airbnbs. It is my understanding when I stopped in to make sure that the one that just opened next door to me is permitted, that actually all 8 houses on Robin Lane could become Airbnb, that there is no limit within a neighborhood or a street as to how many STRs there could be. So eventually my husband and I could be living on a street with 7 Airbnbs. And there has to be some way that this can be limited to a street, to a neighborhood, so that we're not all impacted as hard as it is possible for us to be. 2 Airbnbs in a neighborhood of 8 houses is plenty. The other thing I would like to ask about is Since Robin Lane and our neighborhood is on Loch Lomond, these Airbnbs are making use of the lake, which is POA property. And I'm wondering, how closely does the compliance officer for the city work with the lake rangers? They're on the lake, they're available to see what's happening. The Airbnb that's across the cove, cat corner across the cove from us, has by regulation, Bella Vista regulation, limited to 9 people. There were 15 people jumping off the dock, playing in the lake. Are they staying there? Are they just partying? I mean, who knows? The compliance officer was called on it, and I have no way of knowing what happened on that. But certainly the lake ranger could help. If the lake rangers were made aware of which houses are Airbnbs, if they could check to make sure that the kayaks and the boats are permitted, that would be very, very helpful, I think, in controlling some of what's going on the lake. And I, too, would really like to know what the process is with the compliance officer and whether or not, indeed, there have been permits that have been revoked, because I know the one on the cove across from me has had many more than 3 complaints lodged against it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next citizen is Billy Beveridge of 37 Cargill Drive in Bella Vista.
Thank you. Appreciate you listening. Couple things real quick. Dan Bradney asked me to come here. He had a family incident. He was going to talk about the non-compliance and non-enforcement of the STR, just like Ellen so nicely, put very nicely, and then Rhonda also followed up. But I also like to share an input from my next door neighbor, Brian Proctor and Kathy Proctor. They were unable to attend. They're out in California with family right now. But he said, we will still be out of town and really disappointed that we won't be there to speak and support you, Dan. But we will pray for you and those who speak on our behalf to have wisdom, discernment, and clarity of mind in order to articulate all of the negative effects of STRs. The lack of ownership and investment of renters breeds an uncaring, carefree, and oftentimes disrespectful attitude toward the lake and residents. This is the attitude we attempted to escape when we fled California. If Bella Vista continues to go down this road, the negative consequences can easily be predicted. You can quote me on this if you like, Brian. Now I'd like to add my 2 cents worth. STRs, one in particular across the cove from me, next door to Dan, some of the renters there are okay and respect our neighborhood, but over 50% come here thinking this is vacation land, a place to party, drink, play loud music, use foul language, even go as far as to trespass, pulling a rental pontoon boat up to Dan's dock and loading their people to go out for a ride. This is total disregard and disrespect to private property. Mr. Bradney lives with this nightmare weekly, and we witness it from across the cove, with no resolve or consequences for renters that we're aware of, or STR homeowner code violations. Someone needs to please take ownership of our STR ordinance, and more so advise us on how it will be enforced and see to that it is complied with and by whom for all concerned parties, especially those of us who call this home. Thank you.
Thank you. It's now the time of the meeting for council member reply, if anyone would like to speak.
Yeah.
Doug?
Certainly, this community knows that I've been heavily involved in this conversation for, I don't know, the last 2 years. It feels like 10 years, quite honestly. You know, for a while after the STR ordinance was passed and then it was held, things quieted down. They did. I think I brought this up at the meeting last month. But the phone calls are just starting to really pile on again. And I wish I knew what to tell you, to resolve this problem. And a couple things I would like to say. I think the last gentleman, I apologize, I didn't get your name written down. But you did say that there are responsible STR owners out there. And I would like to say right up front, there are. I know there are for a fact. And we had actually a lot of STR owners that supported our very first ordinance that we passed. In some regards, the reason was because it kind of leveled the playing field for them, because they have a 2 or they have a 3-bedroom home, 2 people per bedroom, which is pretty typical of Airbnbs or VRBOs or whatever. And we have other homes, so in other words, it'd be 4 or 6 people. And, we have homes advertised for 10, 12, 14 people. We know they're exceeding what they really should be, what their compliance should be, right? Well, some of these STR owners that were for the ordinance, they said it helps level the playing field for us because we don't want to upset our neighbors. We don't want our homes, misused, et cetera. And there's one person I know that is a STR owner and have a very nice relationship, and I try not to ever mention names or addresses or anything like that. I don't want to bring people into this conversation, and it makes them uncomfortable because they will face maybe some of the pushback that I did, right? But they had an instance where their septic backed up in the middle of the night. They get a call from the people staying in the STR. They let them stay the rest of the night, but they showed up the next morning, and there were like 9 people leaving the house. I think the house advertised for maybe 6 people maximum. So they had them all leave. They got it rectified. It wasn't that a septic had failed. It was just that it had been overused, caused it to back up. Secondarily, I don't know how that they were informed, but there was a big old party taking place. And these people actually own 2 STRs. And they showed up. They called out the police, and the police waited with these people while all the partiers were getting their stuff together so they could leave and go home and to leave the neighborhood. And the people that were renting the property were actually just from Rogers. They weren't even from somewhere, I don't know, wherever. But they were here locally, more or less. But it really concerns me, that I'm getting all these calls again. And I don't have the answer to the enforcement issue. I have my thoughts about it. I'm not going to say it's an easy thing to enforce, but we have to do something, for sure. And quite frankly, I wish the STR community would take ownership of this situation in their own regard, maybe form their own committee, their own STR group, because a lot of these STR owners, they don't want this black eye in the community. They want to operate in the bounds of their residential neighborhoods or where they live. They don't want to upset people. So I wish they would take a couple steps themselves and see if they can't remedy some of this problem. But, the answer to how do we issue some citations and things like that, we're going to have a conversation with some city officials, and I know they've taken place, but it doesn't seem like there's been much of an answer, and we got to figure it out. I mean, to have to hear this month after month after month, and for me sometimes day after day after day, it's like enough is enough, So I'll just leave it at that.
Larry Wilms.
I think it's important that if you observe a neighboring situation with an STR, creating a noise or another problem, it's important to call the police department and register that complaint and that concern so that it becomes a record for us, it becomes a record for the police department, and they can send an officer out and check the noise or whatever, the improper parking when they park where they're not supposed to. They can send an officer out to check on that. But if you don't make a call to the police department, it doesn't become a record, and we hear a number of people come in and at the open time at our council meeting, they'll complain, and our police chief has gone out after they have left and spoken with them and find out that, no, they didn't call, and they may have complained about 3 or 4 instances. The other side of it is that If you live on a lake, you probably have lots of friends or family who likes to come and visit you. And as a result of that, they like to take advantage of utilization of the lake facility. It's not unheard of that you have maybe more company coming to visit you during the daytime than what your bedroom capacity is rated for. But I think we need to acknowledge that that's probably a possibility that they could have friends coming too. They may have come to Bella Vista as a vacation, but they have friends that live in Rogers or Bentonville or Lowell or Fayetteville or whatever, and they have them come up and visit for the weekend. In which case, overcrowding, yes, but as long as they don't sleep there, it doesn't violate our code. So it's important to recognize that too. We have reasonable times for noise. If they exceed the noise level, again, you need to call the police department and let them know. It helps all of us. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, I left one thing out of the conversation.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you were mentioning, Ellen, you're aware of a couple of short-term rental houses that are not permitted. And I would think if that was reported to code enforcement, that could be maybe submitted to CDS, and somebody should take action on that immediately. They should take a note, and we need to go out and check on that property. There's not any way for the city really to identify all of the short-term rentals because we use a company called Granicus, and they don't necessarily pick up on everyone that's advertising as a short-term rental. Some of them are out there flying under the radar, and as long as they can do that, and as long as they're not being reported, well, they're going to continue to do what they're doing. I would like to just some real quick statistics, just so you'll know. At one time, Granicus was reporting that we had about 545 or 49 short-term rental properties advertising in Bella Vista. It's actually been ratcheting down. I'm sorry, I said 400, right? Did I say 500? 545, 549. We're currently at 497 listings that are being picked up. We've issued 428 permits, which is certainly the highest number that we have registered today. 380 of those permits issued go toward the 700 unit cap because several of those are owner occupied. We have 281 units on septic systems and 106 units listing more bedrooms than the septic permit allows. So those are just some real brief statistics on kind of where we are in that regard. But yeah, just report these properties that do not have permits, and that should be easy, to rectify that.
I just wanted to add one brief thing. That was a slip of the tongue. It's a 600 unit cap, but we
Did
are.
I say what I say?
But we are
I'm
well
sorry.
below it.
Sorry about that.
The other item is at the end of June, we actually had 100% compliance, and for about a day. And then it was time to renew the permits, and we slipped way below compliance. So we're working our way back up. But we are working our way back up to full compliance, and I think a little enforcement, maybe making one or two people go to court, would go a long ways toward getting the others to sign up a little more quickly. So anyway, that's the story on STRs. I appreciate people's comments. Jerry Snow?
This is not a difficult issue. Every time that we hear something of complaint about the STRs, it's always an enforcement issue. It's not my intent to throw the mayor under the bus, but those people responsible for enforcement report to him. So it's up to the mayor to see that the STR ordinance is enforced.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on to the next item, which is action on the minutes. I'm looking for approval of the August 26, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
That was Mr. Fowler and Mr. Wilms. A roll call vote.
Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel,
Motion carried 5-0. Next one is the monthly financial report. We have financials for year-to-date through July 30 that have come out recently. Total operating revenues are up 2.8% over last year. City sales tax is up 6.6%, and county sales tax is up 0.2%, so it's pretty much flat. And our Director of Finance gave me some stats for the state that showed city sales tax average of all of the cities in the state is down. It's down 1% or 2%, and so is county sales tax. So we're doing pretty well on the city side, but the softness I talked about in the county, for several years, we're cranking 8-10% increases, and that softness looks like it certainly is continuing. I do want to mention on operating expenses, we're almost $1 million below budget, which is good. There's a tendency for late in the year, around December, to get a little bit of a bump in the budget. So I'd like to be a good bit. Last year, we were a good bit below, and we ended up only $500,000 below. So you don't want to celebrate too quickly, but it's good that we're keeping control of our expenses. So the finances still look good, but I continue to see a change in trend, especially on the county level, which is quite surprising. Several of our dynamic cities, percentage-wise, are doing worse on sales tax than we are, apparently. So anyway, that's the monthly financial report. Secondarily, I had a childhood cancer awareness proclamation. That's what the yellow ribbon is for. And if they could come forward, I believe we have a couple people, Dory and Mackenzie Madry. I'd like to read the proclamation and then present it to them. We had several families from Bella Vista come today for a photo op earlier before the meeting. Childhood Cancer Awareness Month proclamation. Whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday, and whereas 46 children per day, or 16,790 children per year, are diagnosed with cancer in the U.S., and whereas the average age of diagnosis is 6 years old, and whereas 80% of childhood cancer patients are diagnosed late and with metastatic disease, and whereas 2/3 of childhood cancer patients will have chronic health conditions as a result of their treatment toxicity, with 1/4 being classified as severe to life-threatening. And whereas approximately 1/2 of childhood cancer families rate the associated financial toxicity due to out-of-pocket expenses as considerable to severe, and whereas hundreds of nonprofit organizations at the local and national level, including the American Childhood Cancer Organization, are helping children with cancer and their families cope through educational, emotional, and financial support. And whereas researchers and healthcare professionals work diligently dedicating their expertise to treat and cure children with cancer. And whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease and more must be done to raise awareness and find a cure, now therefore I, John D. Flynn, Mayor of Bella Vista, do hereby proclaim September 2024 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 23rd day of September in the year of our Lord 2024. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mackenzie.
Excuse me, Mackenzie's mom? Do you have anything you'd like to say or anything, or can you?
Yeah,
Sure,
sure, there's a microphone there.
Just want to say thank you on behalf of my family and other families locally here in Bella Vista. If you don't know, Mackenzie had osteosarcoma in 2020. She is currently 3 years cancer-free. However, it came at a cost. So she recently had heart failure, had to be on an assisted device for her heart, and she had a heart transplant back in June. So she is, while she's messed up, she's still isolated, but this is just one of many, many kids that are fighting. One locally that's fighting today, he's in St. Jude, and so many are not winning and dying of this disease, which is why we appreciate the awareness and more funds for research. And so just thank you for your time, and we really, really appreciate this. It means the world to our families. Thank you.
I believe Mackenzie is a student at Bentonville High School, attending remotely. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules of order and procedure to allow all ordinances on the agenda to be read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
That was Mr. Snow and Mr. Fowler. A roll call vote?
Council members Hanschel,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
and Fowler.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Thank you for that. First one is an ordinance waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and authorizing a contract with Superior Automotive Group in an amount not to exceed $143,000 for the purchase of two 2024 Chevrolet Tahoe fully equipped police vehicles for use by the police department.
Move it be approved.
I think we may want to go to third and final on
Yeah,
this.
I did have a question to Chief, and this is really easy, right? So on the two Tahoes, this is our first purchase of Tahoes, is that right? Okay, it's not. So, but they are more expensive than other vehicles. They're like 20 grand a piece, right?
Well, they're more expensive than the Dodge Durango.
Right. But I don't have an issue with it, but you mentioned that the street department, they do the maintenance of all of our vehicles, and at some point they'll evaluate, I guess, the longevity and different things like that, other than the Durangos. Then we might get better use, longer use, thus maybe actually spend less money in the long run. About how long will it be before we kind of get that evaluation?
It looks like, well, so these Tahoes were budgeted last year for this year, so that's before we were, is this off now? These Tahoes were budgeted last year for this year, before we really had that evaluation. But what we're looking at doing to see if we can save this money for next year's fleet will be all Durangos is what I'm looking at right now. And that will save us some money. So I think we have some Durangos out now, and I think we're at the point where we can put some forward in the fleet. And you know, we don't have a full evaluation yet, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
We think we'll do okay. I mean, they seem to be fairly decent cars. They're still V8s. They're pretty hardy. And so by doing that, we can usually purchase, off the top of my head, I believe about 6 Durangos for 5 Tahoes, if that makes sense. And so
Okay.
that looks like we're going to try to do that next year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I thought you said the difference in price was 10 or 11,000, something in
It's
that range.
thereabouts. It's
Yeah.
thereabouts.
Okay, I thought I heard it was a little bit more. Okay.
It could be in between those. It just depends on where the Durango, because the Durango is on the Arkansas State bid contract, and so it'll likely be there next year where the Tahoe isn't. And so depending on how it bids out, it'll be depend on what we pay for it. And if you're looking at these as more expensive than some other Tahoes we purchased, because these are fully equipped, and so we're working through Superior Automotive now to have them put our equipment on at the same time as we buy the car to help save on some taxes and be a little more streamlined and save some money like that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's not to say that in any given year, one of these vehicle lines may have some manufacturing defects. In other words, and so what's likely to happen if you buy, as an example, all of the Durangos in one year, there may be a deficiency in the engine or a transmission or a wheel or whatever.
There could.
And so that's one of the things that you probably will sense by your maintenance aspects. But all in all, assuming they're the same quality of vehicle in terms of the
Yeah,
application.
and we've ran Durangos for years now, but we
Yeah.
just haven't ran them in patrol. That's the
Right,
difference. And
yeah.
so, but they seem to be doing okay.
So it's not to say that you don't have a poor component sometime.
Correct.
So, anyway, thank you.
Is there a motion to move to third and final?
Yeah, I make a motion, move to suspend the rules and move to third and final.
That's Mr. Fowler and Mr. Hanschel. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel,
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. I'll now read it for the third and final time. Waiving the requirements of formal competitive bidding and authorizing a contract with Superior Automotive Group in an amount not to exceed $143,000 for the purchase of two 2024 Chevrolet Tahoe fully equipped police vehicles for use by the police department.
Second.
That was Mr. Wilms and Mr. Fowler. Roll call vote.
Councilmembers Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
and Hanschel.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Thank you for that. Next item is an ordinance approving an application for a private club alcohol permit submitted by Bella Vista Village Property Owners Association, Inc. And this is for the facility at the driving range. Tanyard Creek Driving Range, correct.
I'd like to make a motion
Doug.
to suspend the rules and move to third and final. We discussed this at length during the work session, and I don't think anybody had an issue with it.
I wanted to ask a question first.
Okay, that was Mr. Fowler and Mr. Wilms. Yes, Jerry?
What's the location of this permit?
Tenure.
Oh, it's the Tanyard Creek Driving Range. It's being reconstructed at this point.
At some point, I mean, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission used to contact, if there were any neighbors to any place close to such a facility, they always contacted them. Does anybody know if that has happened or not?
I'm not familiar because it's a POA's permit. Jason?
I don't know, Mr. Snow. All I know is that one of the initial phases they've got to do to apply to ABC is to get the council's approval, and then there are other requirements they also have to meet.
Yes, this may come first, and then they do their other steps.
What you're saying, Counselor, is that this... What you're saying, Counselor, is that this doesn't necessarily equate to them getting the permit. This is a step in the process.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we had a motion and a second to move to third and final.
Yes.
Roll call vote.
Councilmembers Snow,
No.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-1. Any further discussion?
Make a motion to approve.
I think I have to read it to go to
Oh,
third
I'm
and
sorry.
final. Sorry, that's my bad. Approving an application for a private club alcohol permit submitted by Bella Vista Village Property Owners Association, Inc. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
That was Mr. Fowler and Mr. Hanschel. A roll call vote.
Councilmembers Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel,
Yes.
and Snow.
No.
Motion carried 4-1. Next matter is a resolution amending the 2024 budget to appropriate $10,000 to the street department for purposes of paying cleanup-related expenses due to August storm events. And I think we discussed this at the work session, that this is really part of the up to 150,000 for debris cleanup that we had prior approved, but it was a separate lease, so, for equipment. So that's why we need this resolution.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That's Mr. Fowler and Mr. Wilms. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel.
Motion carried, 5-0. Next one is a resolution authorizing the levying the millage rate of ad valorem real and personal property tax for the city of Bella Vista, Arkansas for the year 2024 to be collected in 2025. And you'll note in the resolution that total millage is 6 mills, and there's 4 mills in the general fund, 1 mill on the fire pension, and now there's 1 mill on the police pension. It used to be half a mill because the citizens voted for it in March. So,
And we have 1 mill left.
yeah, we have discretionary.
Right. Anybody? Motion to approve?
Second.
That was Mr. Fowler and Mr. Hanschel. Roll call vote.
Councilmembers Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Motion carried, 5-0.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just as a side note, we're considering it earlier this year. Normally, this would be considered in our October meeting, but because of the scheduling that it needs to be to the county, we need to bring it forward at this meeting. So usually it would be in October.
Okay. Next one's a resolution approving art leases to commence in 2025. This was 3 different leases for art to be at the Bluebird. I think it's still so far the Bluebird Trail on Reardon Road. And these are leased, they're $1,800 each. That's the same price they've been. These will actually start in June 2025 and be paid for in June 2025. But we needed to pass the leases now because we wanted to get the artist nailed down so we could get the pieces we wanted.
And how many,
I'm sorry, you said, did you give the amount? It's $5,400?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's
Total for the
$1,800
leases.
each. I didn't give the
$1,800 each.
math.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
okay.
it's $5,400 total. Right.
I was going to ask how many art pieces are we leasing?
3.
3, yeah. We have a couple pieces there that we own. We own Maryland, and we purchased the one piece, something about superpowers.
Yeah, yeah. The only thing I say is, as you travel around the country, and I think probably a lot of us do, art has become very important to a lot of communities, and communities kind of center around, their art. And they mention them, online if you're going to go and visit a city. And I'm really happy to see that become, part of our city. Our Arts Council does a tremendous job. It's all volunteer. And I'm just really, really pleased to see what's going on. And I mentioned during the work session, I was down by the trailhead, where that art is displayed. And I was really surprised to see the number of cars down there and families with their children down walking that little trail. And I think there's also some playground equipment down there. And so it was really neat. Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Move to approve.
I think Doug made a motion. You want a second?
Second.
Okay. That was Mr. Fowler and Mr. Wilms. Roll call vote.
Councilmembers Fowler,
Yes.
Hanschel. Yes. Snow,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
and Wilms.
Yes.
Motion carried, 5-0. Next thing.
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Because what happens is everybody will kind of get up to leave. And I can't leave this alone. And I do apologize. I saw Kinsey on your shirt, I thought. So your daughter's name is Mackenzie? Yeah. Mackenzie, I just would like to recognize you one more time because you're so brave. I mean, I can't even, fathom, right? And I know this touches so many families, but I just want, you're like an inspiration. So I'm so sorry and so sad, to see what you're going through. But the way that, here you are, you're out in the community, you showed up, and you stayed like for the entire meeting. You didn't just leave and like go home and sit back to rest, right? So just recognition, one more time, because cancer, it's impacted my family very heavily as well. Not children, they're adults, but still, it's such a horrible condition, and also for the family as well, and so blessings and prayers to your family, and I hope for future good health for you and a long life.
Yeah, I hope all the young kids with cancer realize that everybody in Bella Vista is rooting for them. There's even people that don't know you that are behind you 100%. I know everybody feels like that, so thank you. Okay, next item is announcements. There's one that's not listed. City Council special meeting is Tuesday, October 1 at 6 p.m. And there's also going to be a public hearing. That'll be right here at the district court. And that's for the $5.4 million, proposed $5.4 million bond issue, having to do with some of the construction over by Fire Station number 1 and City Hall. And that's a special meeting. Next City Council work session is 5:30 p.m. Monday, October 21. Next City Council regular meeting is 6 p.m. Monday, October 28 at Bella Vista District Court. A Planning Commission work session, 4:30 p.m. Thursday, October 3 at Bella Vista District Court. Planning Commission regular meeting, 4:30 p.m. or immediately following the BZA, Monday, October 14 at Bella Vista District Court. Board of Construction Appeals, 3 p.m. Tuesday, October 8, if necessary, at Fire Station number 4 Conference Room, 1639 Forest Hills Boulevard. And I believe, Larry, before we adjourn, Larry Wilms wanted to make an announcement.
Just want everyone to know that Bella Vista is having a senior expo this year, and it's going to be held at the St. Bernard Church on Thursday, October 3rd. The time is from 9 o'clock in the morning until 12:30, and it's an opportunity to come and learn the latest updates on aging and discover all of the services that communities in Northwest Arkansas have available through different private and public sources. So put that on your calendar for the folks who are retired or in the near retired category. The younger ones can come too. It gives you at least an insight to maybe help a family member as well. So thank you.
I do have one final announcement. Our very first mayor, Frank Anderson, his funeral is September 28 at 11 a.m. at United Lutheran Church at that's the one at the corner of Cooper and Forest Hills Boulevard. So Frank's the one that got all this started, so we salute him. Thank you very much, and we're adjourned.